What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Zayman Law Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Isaiah. And y'all, the Golden State Warriors are interested in trading for Clippers for Paul George, but Klay Thompson is a free agent, so they have a decision to make. Do they want to re-sign Klay, or do they want to go out and try to trade for Paul George? So, y'all, I think we need to compare Klay Thompson and Paul George at this point in their career. So, you look at Klay Thompson this past season, y'all. He averaged 18 points per game, about 3.3 rebounds per game. He shot 43% from the floor and 39% from deep. And y'all, Paul George, he averaged 22.6 points per game, 5.2 rebounds per game, 1.5 steals per game. He shot 47% from the floor, and he shot 41% from three. So y'all, at this point in their careers, Paul George is definitely a better player. And not only does he have the statistical advantage over Klay, but y'all, if you just watch the games, I mean, Paul George is just better. He can do things on the court that Klay Thompson can no longer do, like playing defense. I mean, Paul George is still a really great defender. Klay Thompson is not the same defender that he was 4, 5, 6 seasons ago. So, yes, Paul George is definitely a better player. Okay, we got that taken care of. Next question, y'all. Does Paul George make the Golden State Warriors a championship contender? And y'all, that answer is no, he does not. In my opinion, y'all, if the Warriors trade for Paul George, they would be the 6th best team in the Western Conference, because I think the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, the Mavericks, and the Pelicans are all better than the Golden State Warriors, or they would all be better than the Golden State Warriors. And this is why, y'all, if I was the Golden State Warriors, I would not even be interested in trading for Paul George, because, yes, Paul George is still a great player, but to me, he just is not fit for what the Golden State Warriors need, y'all, because the Golden State Warriors, they need more youth on this team, and they need more size, right? Particularly at their center spot. If you trade for Paul George, he's not a center, right? He doesn't give you more size that you need in the front court to go up against teams like the Timberwolves and teams like the Mavericks and the Pelicans and the Kings in the Western Conference and the Thunder. So I would stay away from Paul George if I was the Golden State Warriors. I get it. Listen, Stephen Curry is still a top 10 player in the league, right? He's going to be 37 next March, and you probably want to do everything you can to surround him with the best possible team so he can potentially go out and try to win his 5th championship. But y'all, Paul George would not make the Warriors the title favorites. Heck, they wouldn't even be a top, like I just said, they would not even be a top 5 team in the Western Conference. This is why, to me, this doesn't even make a lot of sense, y'all. Because if I was the Warriors, I probably would just re-sign Klay Thompson. I mean, they won 46 games this past season. With Paul George, y'all, they probably win 46 games. So, again, they're not going to be that much better having Paul George versus Klay Thompson. When you consider the makeup of that roster and when you consider how talented the Western Conference is. And so if I was the Warriors, y'all, I would try to move Andrew Wiggins for potentially like a Brandon Ingram or somebody like that. And then maybe try to, add like a Jonas Valanciunas in free agency. That's what I would do. But I would not give up potentially Jonathan Kuminga. And as y'all see at the bottom of y'all screen, the Golden State Warriors would be willing to give up Jonathan Kuminga. Mike Dunleavy, y'all, their GM, he came out and said that if they felt like they could add an all-NBA type player, they would trade, some of their young players. Y'all, I don't think that's a good idea. Jonathan Kuminga, he's coming off his best year of his career. He averaged about 16 points and 5 rebounds. He's only 21 years old. I think he has a ton of potential, and I think he's a guy that could end up being a really nice 3-and-D kind of forward in the league one day. Why would you give it up for a guy, Paul George, who's still great, but he's going to be 35 next May? You're going to have to give him a 4-year deal. And even if you get him, you're still not going to be a championship contender. And Steph Curry, listen, now obviously Steph Curry is never going to leave the Warriors. He's never going to request a trade. But y'all, that would definitely piss Steph Curry off, right? If the Warriors gave up Jonathan Kuminga to get Paul George, and then like 3 years down the road, Jonathan Kuminga ends up becoming an all-star, and then you got like a 38-year-old Paul George who's about to retire. Okay, Steph Curry will not be a happy camper about that. And I think if you're the Golden State Warriors, just keep Jonathan Kuminga and continue to develop him, continue to see him progress to become that potential all-star player. But Paul George does not move the needle for me, y'all. He just doesn't. He does not move the needle for the Golden State Warriors. Again, they won 46 games last year with Klay Thompson. That's probably what they would win with Paul George. That's not a championship contender. They will not be able to beat the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, the Thunder, the Mavericks, the Pelicans, maybe even the Kings in the 7-game series. We saw what the Kings did to them in the play-in tournament game, right? I mean, the Kings absolutely blew out the Golden State Warriors. So this is a team, they're not one piece away, y'all. They, to me, are multiple pieces away. They got to get a center. They got to get some more point guard there, because I think they're going to trade away CP3. So this is not a team that's, oh, we're one move away from being a championship contender. No, Warriors, you have to make multiple moves before you even get back into that championship conversation. So y'all, I get it. The Golden State Warriors, they're a desperate team, right? Because when you got a player of Steph Curry's caliber, who, although he's aging, he's still playing at a high level, you feel like, hey, we need to add another star player next to him. But y'all, if it doesn't make sense, don't just do it because you're desperate. And I'm really scared that the Warriors are going to do this. I feel like the Warriors are going to try to trade for Paul George. I don't even think they should be entertaining this at all, but I think they will, y'all, just because, again, they're a desperate team, and we know the old saying, y'all, desperate times call for desperate measures. So I think they're going to try to trade for Paul George. I wouldn't be surprised at all coming up this weekend if Paul George ends up becoming a Golden State Warrior. Y'all, I will come on here and say it's not a good fit. Even though Paul George is a great player still, I would love to see him go to the Philadelphia 76ers, because to me, if he goes to the 76ers, they will become the third best team in the Eastern Conference. The Golden State Warriors, again, y'all, I feel like with Paul George, they would at best be the sixth best team in the Western Conference. But the Philadelphia 76ers with Paul George will have a legitimate shot of winning, the title, because the Eastern Conference obviously isn't as stacked as the West is. So the only thing the Sixers will have to get through is the Boston Celtics and the New York Knicks. Whereas, again, y'all, the Golden State Warriors, you got to get through all these great teams. And I didn't even mention the Los Angeles Lakers, so I think it's going to be a pretty solid team this year. So with the Golden State Warriors, you have to get through all these tough teams in the Western Conference. It just doesn't make sense to add a guy like Paul George when you don't even know how much longer Paul George is going to be a great player. I mean, again, y'all, he is going to be 35 in May. And while he's still playing at a high level now, if you give him a 4-year deal, I mean, by the end of that 4-year contract, Paul George might be on his last legs, and you could give up a guy like John Kuminga, who at that point will only be like 25 years old and probably be an all-star player in the league. Yeah, you don't give something like that up just to maybe improve a little bit. And again, they might not even improve at all with Paul George because of how good the Western Conference is. So, y'all, my final answer is no, Warriors. Do not do this, okay? Just keep your same team and make some changes. Again, I would think about trading Andrew Wiggins for maybe like a Brandon Ingram kind of player, because Brandon Ingram is still young enough where he can actually be here for several years. Paul George, with the age, y'all, his injury history, I just don't love the fit. So if I was the Golden State Warriors, I would stay far away from Paul George, even though he's still a great player, but it just does not make a ton of sense for the Golden State Warriors. So there I have it, man. That was another episode of the Zayden Law Sports Podcast. Remember, y'all, laughter is a good medicine, so make sure you get your daily dose. Y'all know I'm going to end it, man. I love y'all. God bless. Peace.